Both of us single dads from the Midwest, we can talk about it. Both of us single dads from the Midwest, we can talk about it. Both of us single dads from the Midwest, we can talk about it. Or we can get gully, I'll size up your body and put some white chalk around it.
Welcome to the Single Dads of the Midwest, episode 36. I'm joined by the exciting Kevin to talk about a variety of things, including his time working in AV and other technical aspects of the movie world. But we'll see where this conversation goes because Kevin's had an interesting life and has done a lot of interesting things. So without further ado, Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, full name I guess is okay, right? Kevin Colato.
Definitely.
Kevin Colato, born and raised in California, currently living in Texas, and my spent 3.5 years professionally working in film, and then at the same time living that student film student life. Wow, that came out backwards. Film student life.
Nice. And I think you mentioned that you got started in high school, if I remember correctly. Do you want to walk us through that story?
Oh yeah. So I went to a not so small high school, Palisades Charter High School. Anyone from LA would be able to tell you that has nothing but thespians. It caters to the arts. Forrest Whitaker was an alumni and actually yelled at us when we all tried to do a walkout when we were kids.
Interesting.
They filmed Freaky Friday there, Glass House, Havoc, a bunch of Ford commercials. So the school itself is a set, and it's been used countless times, commercials and movies. We have a very strong arts presence there, performing arts specifically for like theater and all that stuff. It's actually embarrassing that we're better at those things than we were at sports, but that kind of makes sense, right? And yeah, I started out in theater, trying to kick off this really awkward stage fright that I had when I was younger, and I kind of just fell into a role of the audio team, like the AV. So it was full on AV, and then we finally did this one production from George Orwell's 1984, which involved us getting like 12 TVs synced up with a projector as well, and pre-recorded blue screened footage with our talent. I have never been exposed to film, uh, but the person that was helping us, the director, she was like, "Hey, we have a film class. You guys should poke your heads in there, ask the teacher for help and guidance, and I'm sure you'll figure it out." That's all we got. We went out to the back to the film class where they're normally held, and the teacher there was old dude, just chilling there. It's really mellow vibes. And he's like, "Oh, you guys want to make a movie? Perfect." Opens up a door, lights, old fashioned lights from like the 70s. And um, these things you can light a cigarette off, it's so hot. And he worked us through it. And we got so absorbed in the work, and I fell in love with the process. I asked him like, "Hey, when do you offer these classes for next semester? I want to get in." And he told me, and he's like, "Yeah, you got to get permission, and you have my permission. So just go to your counselor and say this is what you want." And long story short, I started making a bunch of videos. I fell into more of an editor role, and then found out that there's like, oh, you can go to school for this, because I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Uh, for the longest time, I thought I was just gonna not even go to college. Because I had no direction. I was like, I'm not gonna figure it out, even though everyone was telling me to do it. Ended up going and started community college, and it just exploded from there. I still stayed with the theater crew, so did some theater stuff and improv to work off this awkwardness that I have in front of a crowd. And yeah, there's the film process, the idea. I kept on making videos. I started collecting, like, doing little montages, and then it got even worse because I started looking into like, oh, these video games. So like these video games like Kingdom Hearts, Square Enix, Disney meshed up with Square Enix classic characters. I took their promotional videos from like all their previous ones. I think at this point it was like three of them already, or two or three. Yeah, two or three of them. And I took them all and edited them in a way to like, this is embarrassing, to the song The Killers. No, not The Killers. 30 Seconds to Mars. This is War.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, and it was like I storyboarded the whole thing. So I got really into it. So I was like, I want this. Lyrics are right here. What do I start with? I started out with, the shot, rain, and then I worked it up and I went off from like the tempo of the music to the scene itself, and then what was being said in the audio. So I started doing that. And little did I know, I was working through a process that an actual like there's a study for this kind of behavior. Like people do association, people do like there's a reason to the madness. There's a reason why behind every cut, every that why some scenes flip from side to side so quickly. Um, but I was doing it naturally because it felt right.
That makes
Um,
sense. And I'm curious, like in your opinion, what are some of your favorite films in terms of like kind of the AV editing technical side?
oh, oh man, I'm sorry. That's actually that's hard. That's so hard.
I mean, from my experience, I really like the way Nolan cuts, or I mean, I guess the editing team for
Mhm.
Copy cuts their films. But um, I think actually Tarantino does interesting stuff with his edits too, and the way he transitions scenes a lot. I'm trying to think of like other examples.
Here's a one that I personally do like. Um, Guy Ritchie films, the way that several stories are melded together, but the jumps are so fluid, and then it's like they feel chaotic sometimes, but like it kind of leads into what the story is.
I
Yeah.
love those. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I mean, paired with the whatever audio they decide to do during every cut, it's just I don't know. That's just my personal taste. And then I spent a year studying uh Kubrick and Akira Kurosawa films in one of my when I was in college. And two different styles, which I like for different reasons. Um, yeah, no, it depends on an emotion you want to attach to your cut and right. So like whatever the scene is, whatever, because you can reinterpret everything. You can take a serious scene and make it comical, but depending where your focal points are, right? You can tell the same story five different times with five different approaches. It's none of them is going to feel the same. This is how they always do what's it called, the reboots and um most soap operas are the same story, just like told in a different way. Like some people are really good at telling stories, other people are just like it's the shittiest campfire song I've ever heard. I'm sorry, I just took I took a sip of coffee. I was like, oh, my mic is right there.
Oh no, you're good.
uh
I was thinking in
yeah.
terms of what you're saying, like how many like choices go into just everything you see in the film, like what cuts to use, angles, edits, like everything, like kind of frame by frame is like a choice, and that's like a lot of options. Um, which is kind of crazy because I think what you said hits the nail on the head of like you could take the same scene and even the same actors giving the same dialogue and just like where you place the cameras and where you choose to cut can make an amazing, and I guess music too makes an amazing difference.
Yeah. There's there's a I forgot what movie it was. For some reason I want to say Mark Wahlberg was in it, but like no, but let's just say you have a shot and it's a close up over the shoulder conversation between two heads, right? And then all of a sudden a statement's made and you get a super wide shot and they look like little ants in this which establishes space between them. So what you thought they were closer, um when they pull out all the way, they're just like probably 6 feet apart. So really builds up perspective and how they like the tension between the two. So if they were close, really close, just basically like tongue punching each other, it's more intimate. But when they were like 6 feet apart, it's more like a standoff, a confrontation. Same thing with camera angles, like higher or lower, or you can really manipulate a person's emotion. You can get the shittiest character out there, like most god awful personality, and make them likable depending how you shoot them. It's kind of like how you're perceived at work. You know, from and I'll be honest here, I do this a lot in my current work. I have two monitors for my laptop, and then I have this huge 32-inch TV that they call a monitor. Um, that TV has three windows open at all times. My messengers, my actual like window tab for emails and such, and then my video player, or like to be honest, at this point, YouTube or HBO or something. I look like I'm focused staring at that monitor, but actually I'm watching a movie. I'm catching up on Lord of the Rings. I'm catching up I'm watching something funny on YouTube. And then it just looks like I'm focused because my hands are just propped right there. And then sometimes I'm messaging my team back, but I'm still watching the movie. But it looks like perspective. So like they're seeing it from the other side. If they were right here, same to my right, off from the monitor, still seems the same way. But if they're over my shoulder, it's that one scene from Avengers, like that guy's playing Galaga. Thought you'd never notice. We did.
Theatricality and deception. And I'm sure you probably noticed like like the cuts and stuff. Like the kind of more nuanced parts of movies that like maybe like the average moviegoer or the TV goer doesn't see.
For a while, I hated going to films, to cinemas, because I would go with all my film friends, because my close circle of friends became like my childhood friends and people I worked with in film, and we would just dissect a scene, or like, oh man, this was awful. Who let this happen? Or like, oh, continuity's off. Why is that? That's so weird. And it just ruins the magic. Like the immersion is gone, and the story, I stopped paying attention to it altogether. And all I can think about is like, wow, Nicolas Cage didn't have a a band-aid there at that time. Where'd it go? Oh, it's back again. Cool. Or like,
But
when did you get the cut?
I hope that it came back because I know in my experience with music and getting better at music, I had a similar experience of like
Mhm.
not liking music as much, which is weird to say because I love it, but just when things got deconstructed. But then eventually got to the point where I liked it again. Did you have that experience too?
It took years. Took years. It actually, I got lucky because I was taking care of my nephew at the time, and I'm just a bachelor. I'm just a dude doesn't know how to take care of. I couldn't even take care of my dog without the help of my sister. Uh, but she trusted me with her kid, so like I guess I was good enough for that. And I didn't know what to do, so I gave him cheesy puffs, sat him down next to me, and watched Breaking Bad or something else. But doing that kind of helped me get back into just enjoying the story because I'm just sitting there and the kid's like, oh, honestly, I shouldn't be showing Breaking Bad to a 2-year old, but
Maybe they're so young that it just doesn't phase them.
it's just a boring action movie that my uncle likes to watch. I don't know. But yeah, I got back into it where like I can watch a movie, and I've been doing that regularly now, especially since the movie theaters out here, they're freaking awesome. They have like these recliners on them, and I can order a beer with them. It's really nice. It's changed since I when I was younger.
No, same. I think that's also a growing trend in California. I think it got kind of obviously halted with the pandemic, but with I think now that it's in resurgence, there's like a nice feel going to the movies. You reserve the seats. you can get food in a lot of places. It's a very different, like you said, it's a very different than like the, the very popcorn crusted floors I think we
Oh
experienced growing
God,
up.
that all I can think about is that one Dane Cook stand up when he's like, it's like someone nutted on the floor or something. I don't know. He says a joke, something like that. Yeah, no, I love it. I even actually just recent a couple throughout a couple weeks, I watched the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy in a movie theater. They did a showing for them in the extended edition. So after work, go to the movies, watch Lord of the Rings, and then I started watching The Godfather as well. So we watched The Godfather and then Godfather 2 and watching these movie theaters. And like, it just feels really nice to sit in the movie theater, recline back, a couple beers in my hand. Yeah, double fisting sometimes. And then just watching The Godfather. And
Good times for
it just
sure.
hits different. It's a different feel. Like I've had friends who have home movie theaters, but going to actual movies, very different.
No, I 100% agree. Um, I was gonna ask, like, I know you mentioned that you actually burned out a little bit of editing because, like, I think you said you did the first. You eventually found your way towards a career where you're doing first rounds of edits,
Mhm.
um, but it seems like that even in itself can become a very repetitive process.
I mean, yeah. So I don't know how they do it these days, but when I was still working, they break it up into teams. So the the first round is you're getting all the footage and you're labeling, flagging everything, pinning everything, doing rough cuts of whatever they give you, like the director gives you, or like your lead gives you. And you're stuck in a room with no windows, a bunch of monitors, and you're just clicking away, clicking away, clicking away. This is like you're allowed some room to fuck up because that they don't expect you to do fine cuts at that point. They just want to make sure you get every time it's something slated for a scene, label it from the way it is. Um, Maybe put a note on it. It's like, oh, this was a good shot for with this, or this was botched. Oh, blooper, or like someone messed up, or and after that, it gets pushed over, reviewed. This is when they start getting the idea of how they actually want every scene to look like. They get it from because they don't shoot just one shot, just one shot. That's boring. They shoot from different angles. That way, you can have options. Um, and my job was just to do the rough cuts, and I mean, I can do the finer attunements and then the color corrections and stuff. Though I hated it because you have to watch one scene for like hours on end, or like a couple minutes over and over. That 1 millisecond, the one frame, just one frame off, one frame off. Oh, that feels weird. Okay, there you go, sweet spot. Move it on to the next scene, to the next shot. Um, but yeah, like, and you don't have that much social interaction unless you're working with other people like every day. Sometimes they just leave me to my own devices and like send me home. It's like, hey, take all this and work on it from home, send it over, Dropbox the hell out of it. Oh, and yeah, yeah. If you have any questions, phone call. Oh,
Seems like a very isolating experience for sure.
great for introverts. I was not an introvert.
Would you like if you had an opportunity to do the more, I guess, say creative side of edits? I guess part of that's also in the director's hands. Would you
Yeah,
want to do that?
yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, like some places they do like or some teams I've worked in, there's like a head editor. Like oh, just like directors does one thing, but these were all indie works though. So they had one person doing the edits and with a team, and everyone will be like, oh, you do this section, you'll do this section, you'll worry about this section, and I'll come and review it, make sure it's the continuity between like the styles are the same because it's from one person right here and representing the vision of another person. So it's a weird collaborative that you're just like, oh, we have to just keep it going to the same pace. Otherwise, it throws people off.
Makes
Because
sense. Oh, you
or
were
some
gonna say.
Yeah, or sometimes they do it intentionally because the film wants to mind fuck the hell out of you or make you uncomfortable.
Are, are there like popular examples of that?
Um, oh man, I can't remember the name of it. Seven, Seven had a scene like that.
Oh,
Um, the one I might be,
Brad Pitt.
yeah, Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, I
I
think
think it
it's
had a few scenes where like not only the color was off, but like the cuts were weird. Or am I thinking of some different things? Uh, found footage films. Those are
like the
I think
Blair
they're
Witch Project.
yeah,
Yeah,
or it's that one with like the kids getting superpowers. Uh, those films are edited in that way. Um, Super 8, is it? Is
yeah,
that
I
one?
think that was it. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's just to just disorient you and just you're like, what the fuck is going on? Normally they don't do the whole freaking movie like that, but sometimes they do, and those are indie films mostly.
Makes sense, and they've had success. I mean, Super 8 was relatively popular. Maybe a little bit different, but I know Cloverfield was like the one with the shaky cam, and that was like an intentional choice.
Yeah, man. Call it intentional. You can't afford a steady count. No, no, they did that. I know that was intentional, but like, that'd be really funny. That'd be me, honestly. In a nutshell, like call it intentional. I'll commit to my mistakes.
I was curious, as someone who's worked on all these indie projects, like, is there any advice you have for people doing indie films or indie shorts, TV? Like,
Mm,
you've probably seen it all beyond editing. I'm sure you've seen. I think you mentioned even acting in some small parts.
yeah. Well, which is weird because all around me were people that did well for themselves. I the films, people that worked on the Django Unchained set were working with me at one point. A friend of mine who became a line producer for the Steve Harvey show, like uh, you know, people that moved on and continued on their path to making that movie magic. Honestly, you're allowed to be selective with what you take on. It's more fun and beneficial for you if you don't just take whatever falls on your lap. Actually, look for the things you want to do
I think that's really
because it's
interesting and probably good advice. I was just going to say, because as a contrast, I think there's kind of this philosophy of like, just get your foot in the door and do whatever you can.
uh, well, yeah. I mean, you always want that, right? But at the same time, it's like don't just leap for the first thing because that first thing might not be the best experience for you. Uh, you're looking for something specific, or if you just want to get a taste of it, just pick up a camera and start doing something yourself. It's not going to be the best production, but like get the idea, get the feeling. Like my first feel of it was the 24-hour film festival. We did a thing and we worked on it, and we were just kids at that time. We're like 18, 19 years old. But that was my first like taste of being on a set or like working on something. I just did it. From then on, like a, a group of us stayed with it, stayed with the film thing, and we got an idea what we want to do, what we can do, what we don't like. Uh, and then at that point is when you get options like, you want to be a production assistant. Know that if you're lucky, you can get some freak accident thing that would happen. Like for me, I went on a set knowing that I was going to be a production assistant, and I was like, I'm going to be the bitch of the set. I'll get all those cigarettes for you, give you all those like those headache pills, ibuprofen. I'm your guy. And as soon as I show up on in my truck, and I have always had my film equipment in my truck, like my gear. And they're like, "Hey, we need more grips. We're short on hands for today." And then one of my friends, who was the second AD, he was like, Colato, dude, you got your stuff? You can grip, right? Meet up with so and so. Your grip now. I was like, I was Pete. He's like, doesn't matter. We have enough of those. Go grip. And then from then on, I kept on just going up and up and up. And then meeting people that are working on sets. We exchange numbers because like we don't always get walkies or we don't always get like, so you share these numbers with everyone and then they'll remember you. Sometimes the attention, not all attention is good attention, but some attention is the perfect attention you can need. Like it's like, oh, that's the guy that got me the thing, or that's the guy that knew how to make rain, the artificial rain, or like, oh, that's the guy that can climb the trees to hang up lights. Um, or like, oh, this is the dude that actually knows how to do like proper highlighting. But people will remember you for what you do. And as long as you're like, you keep those relationships going, like just don't even force it because the moment you force it, you push people away. It's like human nature. It's like you coming on too strong, bro. Take a couple steps back. You're freaking me out.
Makes sense. And
Yeah.
24-hour film festival, is that like you have 24 hours to make some sort of film?
So that on the first hour, they would give you a prompt. They give you, okay, so like for us, it was like when we did it, what was it? It was like, oh, you'd have to do like a 5 minute short or something like that. There needs to be a bench and there needs to be two people. Like, that's all your criteria is. Like create any story from scratch within 24 hours, film it, and you have like a short criteria, like things that need to be on in the scene. Like sometimes it's random. Like I make sure there's a blanket or blankets involved in the story or something.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then you have 24 hours to film, edit, and send it. And it's the most painful shit in the world. Because you're like there and like you're arguing with like what the fuck. I think what was ours? It was just something simple. It was like a park bench, old homeless looking dude turns out to be just a widow or and the old lady that was with him was his recently deceased partner.
Oh, dang.
So that's what we came up with last minute. It was supposed to be funny, and then it turned into that. It was like,
Were you with the group that you knew ahead of time, or was it just you were
no,
thrown with them?
you don't know anything. You like the
Okay.
first hour, they give you the information you need, and you film it and calling, and then work it through. So
Wow.
it's just a group of us. Like at the time, it was like 5 or 6 of us.
Oh, wow. And was this through like school or just like a separate competition?
No, you could look. Yeah, it's nationwide, I think.
Sounds like something
Yeah,
fun to do. I
it
was
is.
thinking,
It is. It's fun to do, and it's a lot of time crunching. You like everything's just got to be fast paced. You got to have. I always recommend having like the basic setup. Like bounce board, camera, one portable light, or something like a tripod. Keep it static, or keep the simple things easy to carry, move around because you're not going to have time to plan everything. You're not going to have to. You're going to do a lot of guerrilla shooting, or like if you do preemptively get yourself a studio, you don't have that much time to build anything. So
yeah,
they don't give you much room to work with or like to really make big production, which kind of pushes people. Like it really gets the creative juices flowing. And like there's like that one peak hour when you're in post production where just like you're drained and all of a sudden there's a spark of there's just like a surge. Like it's a spark that turns into a surge of just ideas just start flowing out. Maybe it's just you're just delusional at that point, and then that's where the magic happens. But
no,
you're up there with your buddies, you're editing, it's hot, you're in your underwear, you're like just up in the wall, like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. And then you commit to your mistakes. I say that a lot because like sometimes you just like it feels wrong, but it feels right, and you're not sure, and you're just like, fuck it, just do it. Someone might like it.
yeah, I mean that makes sense. And also like with that time frame, like we can't really change a whole lot easily.
Yeah.
And
I would do it again. I would if
I
someone
would
came up to me.
I would do it, except I don't have filming experience.
That's a beautiful thing. You don't need it. You just have to have the intent, right? We didn't have filmmaking experience. This was our first rodeo. We just knew how to use cameras. We just knew how to edit, and that is it. Um, so that's and it's catered to people that want to try it.
Okay, I
It's a
might.
fun thing to do.
That would be
Yeah.
fun. Maybe even like a self-imposed 24-hour film, like do it for myself. I know you mentioned that so because of a lot of these things, you've tried different jobs, like stuff completely outside of film. What were some of those interesting experiences like?
So I did a lot of photography. Pulled it up. I actually mostly came up from working on set. So the behind the scenes and all that stuff shooting. Uh, a lot of the guys always made fun of me, especially with this buddy of mine. He was like, dude, why does it always look like you're posing on cameras? And all my Facebook, because he gives me all these pictures, and every one of my Facebook pictures that I've uploaded is like, that's a good picture. It's like, yeah, you look like you're posing. Like I didn't direct you. You were just walking up trying to get chips. Oh, there's one where I'm laying down. I look like I'm like Rose Dawson just trying to get paint me like one of your French girls. I'm just waiting between set. There's this one shot where I fell asleep on the tree after during a set, yeah,
Oh wow.
and that tree was in the shot, and I was like, they're like, you sure he's not gonna move? I'm like, and then they came over with a mag light. It's like, yo, wake up, bitch. Um, but yeah, so I started taking photography because I didn't want to be in front of the camera, and it just kind of exploded. I did jewelry shoots, I did modeling. I did have a couple of girls, including a girl I was dating at the time, asking me if I would do nudes for them early. And I mean, I guess a lot of people would jump to the because they see like, oh, this is art. I'm like, get more power to you, but I cannot. I get too distracted.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
but at the same time, I just don't feel comfortable doing that because I feel like I don't know, me just being awkward, I guess. But I did do a lot of like intimate shots with people and uh trying to have like an organic picture taken of someone. So I'd often have a conversation just like we're having right now and say something off the wall, just weird, like oh, let's do some animal facts or like let's play some Q&A, like 20 questions or something. Ask me a question. I'll be completely honest. And always say something really stupid. Um, like, okay, like, what was your biggest mistake? I was like, oh, I tried to climb a tree and then I fell off the tree and hit my nuts on a branch. Um, you're like, what the fuck? Or like, what was your biggest regret? I was like, challenging a friend in a sword fight. Uh,
That's great.
yeah, and it'll throw them off and they'll get confused and they'll give me a little interesting look. Or sometimes they just burst out laughing, which is like a natural laugh. Nothing's better than a natural laugh.
Of course.
Like a true smile. Everyone can do like the grin, like Facebook smile. I was like, oh, those are cringy for me. Like don't do that. Uh, but yeah, doing these photo shoots, doing landscape. I would take my dog. I had a German Shepherd, and when he was a puppy, I would just take him out for like long hikes, and I'll take these great silhouette, like West Coast sunsets, just are different. I love them because you get that purple, those blues, and you get do silhouette shots with people. I have this one with like a family on a hill, and they're pointing out like that, and I just get their silhouette, and all you see is like dad, mom, kid, and then if you pull out, my dog's right there being all dopey. But it was a good shot. It was, I mean, like I kept it. I didn't tell him to take a shot, but I did. I did a lot of light rating, long exposure pictures. I started teaching my friends how to do that, and then it got out of hand. And now I want to do like did fireworks, so using fireworks as for long exposures and the explosion, the impact. That was cool. Uh, After that, I did a lot of random things, a lot of random writing. I just wrote down ideas for like mini web series back when web like short series are like a thing. Did one for like this I think I just had been watching The Hangover or something, and Zach Galifianakis' character was just like interesting to me. And he was like, "What if you took a mob boss's son, how the mob boss's son fuck up, and him being the same personality of Zach's character?" And I started writing ideas, scenarios, like take a serious like mob movie scene and just plug plug in the goofy character. Everything else is serious, but this dude's just no. Like,
That'd be fun. Did you ever watch Video Game High School?
no, no.
Oh, it
Like,
was kind of like a web short. I think it's through YouTube, but it was like a web short series. I think it was like early 2010s, or maybe could have been a little bit before or after. But I enjoyed that one. I mean, it's a little bit quirky and campy, but I felt like that was pretty fun.
well, who doesn't like quirky and campy? I mean, look at Marvel.
Fair enough.
There's an audience for it if you do it right. But sometimes it just feels like like the cringy memories that you have from high school. You remember them in the shower. You're like, why did I do
Some self forgive. We were all a little bit like that. Some self forgiveness
that?
goes a
Oh,
long way for sure.
yeah, we're those are the good days. What are you talking about? I was allowed to be weird. Now, if I'm weird, I get questioned. Like, how's your sanity?
I think we all need a little bit more childlike fun, or like I think we all need to let loose a little bit in within reason.
Oh yeah, well, I need to figure out the reason part. I definitely, I definitely get some stares sometimes when I joined in a call and immediately it's a group call
Mhm.
and immediately someone just like muted me. They're like, before he says something just off the wall at 9 in the morning. And I'm just sitting there like, I didn't get a chance to.
Damn, that's
Plus,
disappointing. Preemptive strike.
they're like, or like it's been like 45 minutes and I say something because they ask me. They're like, so Kevin, what are you gonna get into this weekend? I'm like, midget wrestling. It's my championship match. I mean, no, I'm just gonna watch it. And then they're like, "Why did we even ask you?" It's true. Chicken chip bingo. It's a thing. Um, just random things that I just get myself into, not intentionally.
I feel like the world could use, I guess, more characters. I think that was a branding for like a television station. Like it was the show Monk. It was the channel Monk and Psych were on, which I forgot.
Sci-fi?
Not
No.
Firefly. It, uh, but basically, like I think quirky characters make the world like an interesting place. So
Yeah, no. I mean, during COVID, I gathered a bunch of interesting personalities. I started up a Discord, and it was just a community of people. First of all, gamers. Second, creatives. So these people do have hyper realist artists. We had digital art artists. We had graphic designers. We had writers. We had D&D DMs, dungeon masters. We had YouTubers, Twitch streamers. We had it all. We had musicians, um, and we just did random things. So when we were on lockdown, we didn't have anything better to do. I did my meetings in the morning, and I fucked around for the rest of the day, drinking and staying at home. So I got myself my VR and got into these games like what's it called? I forgot the name of the game. What was it called? It's the VR chat. It's the closest thing to human interaction we can get at the time. And I had all these creatives with me. Let's make some stuff happen. So we did some random things. We wrote a script together, and I was like, what if we trapped everyone in a ride share, and every character is a film genre? So it's based out of the driver's perspective, and the driver is a YouTube streamer or something like like those IRL streamers. They do like people studies and stuff. And this dude took his mom's van, rigged it up with cameras all over the place, hidden cameras, And it was like, let's see how people interact when they're in a car shared together. So the first person you pick up is action. So the Twitch streamer is documentary personality. Then you have action personality. So think like Bruce Willis, Die Hard. There's a rush. There's a need for him to be at a certain place. Beat the traffic. Oh no, you accidentally hit shared ride, man. It's not just your Lyft ride. You have to share with others. And he's like, what the fuck?
This is all
And
like planned out ahead of time, right? Like to
yeah,
be that character.
when I wrote it, I had the idea, and I got everyone else to chime in. It's like, what are some film genres that you'd be so interesting to put together? So action, then comedy, then romance, and then the last one was horror. And each character had their own like backstory that we didn't tell throughout the scene, but we created these characters, and like, oh, it's like action needs to go to this one place. It's not defined what they need to do, but they're in a rush, airport, something, doesn't matter. We don't say. This dude just, maybe he needs to take a shit and he needed a ride home, uh, but he has some urgency that he needed to be someplace. Comedy, he's drunk. He's Captain Jack Sparrow, personality. He's just really fucked up and wants to get home, but also still is not against having more fun. Oh, look, he brought himself an extra flask. Romance. Her previous Tinder date went wrong or felt wrong, but actually turns out to be right. And then she's kept on and off talk with this person. And then she wants to go see him again. Maybe she doesn't want to go see him, but no, she does. She does because, her love triangle situation. So she wants to go to a certain
So
place.
is the driver trying to guess what genre it is?
Yeah. The driver is just viewing these guys and talking
Oh,
to them
okay.
and egging them on. Just like, hey, I'm sorry, guys. We're doing this, but I'm an observer. And we, as the audience, are observing this whole situation unfold. And at the end, we have horror. And horror comes in and asks a lot of intrusive questions towards everyone. He's the one pushing in conversation with everyone else because he gets in with romance. They get in at the same time. That's how you can get them all in together and still have enough time at the end of the scene. And all in all, it turns out that what if horror wasn't the person you were supposed to pick up? What if horror knew more than what horror let on? What if horror was actually watching and was a stalker of documentary?
Oh shit.
And it's easy. You can film this in a car, and you don't actually have to go anywhere. You just put them in a spot, put them in like traffic, blue screen the hell out of it. And we wrote that, and then we reenacted it in virtual reality, and it was the goofiest thing because we were all like goofy characters as they are in those games. Uh, but yeah, we created these fun stories and these ideas, and then uh, my personality online is always fray. So I used to get drunk and tell stories of like my like real stories and things that have happened to me, but in a comical way to be more lighthearted. Be like, this was shitty, but at the time it was shitty, but like now I get to laugh at it. And so it was the Adventures of Fraggles. That one time he got attacked and got his ass bitten by a dog, or like I would just tell these stories in front of people virtually, and people write it down, people record it. I've for some reason been added to a lot of streamers that did that. They're like, oh, we met an interesting person. He was drunk, but he was interesting enough. And he was like, yeah, he was a stripper pole at one point. And it made great conversation, talked about weird things, made great creepy voices, Uh, and then yeah, I did a lot of random things. When you're locked in and you don't have anyone to talk to. I lived alone too, which was interesting because I got to know my neighbors without actually knowing what my neighbors look like. One of my neighbors had a jackhammer for a dildo. It was weird. I thought it was construction up there. And then I was like, she dropped it one time. It was like, she's like fucking machine gun stick down.
Duck and cover.
Sorry.
No worries.
It's like, I'm just remembering all these random things right now.
Damn.
Like I'm just going down the line of things I can remember. Yeah, no, lately I've been doing a lot of just fantasy story creations for like mostly with the intent to inspire some of my friends that do D&D. Throughout COVID, I also tried that too. I've always been interested, but never confident enough to do it because, like, back in the day, everyone was like, "Oh, you're a nerd. Like, you do D&D, really?" But now it's like people are very accepting towards like the nerd culture and like So I was like, "Yeah, I'll try it. I'll try it." A couple whiskeys in, I'm like talking in character, you know. It was great.
Amazing.
But I started creating stories for these people, and they seem to like it. It's mostly inspired by random things I've read, heard, or thought of. Um, or yeah, that's it.
As a good dungeon master usually does. Yeah, I
I've
think
never done
we're,
it.
well, I mean, from my experiences,
Yeah,
but I feel like you said, in the same way with like movies and editing, there is a sort of technical side of it and like a kind of systematic way, but there's also just the feel that you get. I think that's like you probably have the natural storytelling gift, even if it's not like something that you necessarily learn from actually DMing.
my family always told me I was you're sassy, over dramatic, and god damn, you're fucking annoying. I was like, got you, boo. Oh, and facetious. Just like
Just
I was like, oh, I'm sorry. It's how I cope. Um, no way. So whenever I think about random things like that, so I think about sometimes the audience, but most of the time I think about an emotion. If I want to attach an emotion to a decision, what is what and where are we going to end up with it? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't, you get a different reaction from people. Some people like empathize. Some people really empathize with like the antagonist for some reason. Lately, that's been more of a common thing. It's like every villain has his origin story, and people are interested because that seems more realistic than being the hero because the hero is so selfless. How many selfless people do you know outside from your grandparents? And even then, I can tell you, my grandparents are not selfless. They're like the gremlins. Um, so yeah, no, like that's intent.
makes sense. Yeah, I guess I feel like we covered actually a lot of ground. Um, were there any like other big takeaways, maybe just from the pandemic or the creative side of things, or anything you'd like to leave with the listeners? And also a shout out to Don/Sheldon for putting us in contact.
Yeah, no, I still need to have breakfast with that man again. Um, a takeaway from all this, everything that I've done, um, never be afraid to actually express what's just screaming and scratching to get out from inside you. Doing film, music, or any other creative approach, this is your opportunity to like just really just yell, just unleash, let it go. I've created a lot of like sad stories. I've created a lot of funny stories. One of my shorts that I directed was a dude impulsively trying to jack off. And this was during a dry spell that I was having. It was like weird, me just being kind of like I was trying to express restraint and not be a little whorebag when I was younger. And I created that. And or I created this really sad thing because I'd just been dumped, uh or I wrote something out and just write a series of thought dumps. Like it doesn't make sense, but when you start scratching off some things, you're like, I actually got either a song or a story or something, or a monologue. Um, if you're an actor, that comes from inside. You can't act without knowing how that thing feels. You're so feeling is the first thing that comes to mind whenever I do anything creative, whether it be rage, happiness, goofy, just off the wall, just impulsive thought, like intrusive thoughts. When I was I wrote down these thoughts, and I was like, what would a psychopath feel like? Or like, so as a barista, if this killer was a barista, like I can think of 30 different ways of how to kill someone with an espresso machine, like it's weird things like that. It's just like thoughts, feelings, whatever. Slap it all on, just dump it all. Just you have a deck of cards, just starts letting it rain, just letting it out. Eventually, you'll get something. It's like when you learn how to type. You just keep on typing. Don't stop. Don't worry about don't backtrack. Just keep going forward and just let it all flow out. Because you'd be surprised what comes out afterwards. And it's kind of like relieving. It's therapy in its
Yeah.
own weird way.
No, I think that's very well said.
For the first time, I actually understand how painters feel. I was like, just talking about that right now. And that's exactly what I just did right now. So I'd let everything out, just random thoughts, everything that just built up right now. And
That-
also this really strong cup of coffee that I just killed.
I think on that note, that's a great place to end. And I just want to thank you again for coming on, teaching us about your experiences.
Yeah, no. Thank you for having me.
Of
Um,
course.
I'm happy we kept on on the fun, happy side of it all, because as most career paths go, they do get there's some sad and very frustrating parts. Like
For sure. And I
you will be
think
broke
we,
majority of the time.
no, of course. I mean, I'm glad that we had an overall positive vibe, but I think we did touch upon like kind of realistic things, like you mentioned, with the first side of edits being very like kind of repetitive, more technical, and not a lot of creative control. I think it's important that we also talk about, and we did, the realistic aspect of that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
thanks
rough, man.
again. Oh, I'm sure. I've done some like very repetitive tasks of just like Excel or just different things, and not the same, but just the general concept I can relate to.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is you get better at it, and it becomes like cakewalk. It's so easy.
But on a positive note, there are a lot of other creative avenues, like you mentioned, just you on your own of
Yeah.
expressing yourself.
Transferable skills.
Exactly.
All right. All right. Thanks for having me, man.
Of
This is
course.
actually a lot of fun recounting all my past misadventures.
And it's people love hearing stories. That's why they go to the movies. So, thank you for sharing.
Sure. All right. Thank you, man. Have a
Yeah.
good one.